$1,000 XRP is absolutely insane if we can't hit even $3 yet or $5. So could we be seeing $1,000 for XRP? Some YouTubers are saying yes. Let's check this out.
I believe, I was going to say I fear, but I believe we are actually beginning to enter the euphoric phase of the cryptocurrency market.
I feel like the euphoric phase was really like the last 8 months. We just didn't notice it because it was mostly all the eyes were on Bitcoin anyway.
This is usually marked by a number of things that we tend to see within the cryptocurrency space. So in case you've missed it, a large number, this isn't like 3 or 4, we're talking about hundreds of companies, have been announcing in the very recently about the acquisitions that they plan on acquiring for cryptocurrency assets. Basically, it's constantly in the billions of dollars. And if you've noticed, if you've connected, that's not right, the news within the cryptocurrency market, you've kind of seen that the price rises have also correlated to companies announcing that they're buying gigantic amounts of coins.
I feel like with an ETF, there's going to be the XRP companies joining in. So a lot of XRP companies are suddenly going to be joining us, which they're going to announce that they are now owning, after the ETFs have been coming in, some XRP. We are seeing that with Bitcoin. We saw that with Ethereum. We are now waiting for XRP to do the same.
One coin in particular has grabbed the attention of a large number
XRP.
of people, and it is because of its alleged and apparent and actual ties to a number of organizations. This has been going on for quite some time.
A lot of you know that.
But now when I said like this idea of like the euphoric, it's also slightly manic as well.
Like a lot of people couldn't buy it, a lot of institutions in 2020 because it was fully regulated. And if they lost that lawsuit, it would be very risky to hold it. That's why a lot of them bought Bitcoin instead. So let that sink in. There's a very small percentage, even compared to Bitcoin, not even speaking about the rest of the world, which own XRP. Maybe it's like 0.001% because they didn't even have that option. But I feel like this will change starting once the ETFs get published. We already saw the first XRP treasury being revealed.
XRP has constantly, this coin in the future, I think is going to have a lot of books written about it, a lot of documentaries. This isn't something that I'm just throwing out there. The amount of energy constantly surrounding Ripple and XRP is, I even think in many ways, a lot more intense than Bitcoin and Ethereum potentially even combined.
It's already grown more than Ethereum and Bitcoin. What makes it say it couldn't grow even more than that? Why are the whales buying it at $3? I mean, same could be said for Ethereum and Bitcoin. They're buying it at, at the highest. But it's a very clear indicator that the whales, they have a chance right now. They're buying back as soon as the supply hits below $2.8. Doesn't it kind of make sense?
The original intent of XRP was to be used exclusively by banks. That was the thing years ago. It was XRP and Stellar Lumens. You could find it on their old websites, and they said, we're here to work with banks or something. I'm paraphrasing extensively, but that was kind of the thing. Basically, if crypto was going to take over, therefore XRP would be like the bridge asset that banks and governments and institutions could use, as opposed to having to rely on the old system. That has kind of morphed into this thing where, and I'm going to be as honest with you as I completely can, the idea of what they're doing, and I mentioned this, I alluded to this before in other videos. We get such an extensive extensive amount of news about what's happening in this space explicitly. So
I feel like this is what also, pumped XRP's price, because if Bitcoin had this type of news every single day, its price would be 200,000. But when you keep coming back, like what happens when you not watch news all the time? You only think about the news itself, right? And that's what's happening with XRP. It's just a huge cycle where XRP is not only about utility, but it's also becoming sort of a media entertainment thing where they are having like news articles, they're having all sorts of technology development, they're having gatherings, and that's what's really boosting XRP. They're doing networking. They are networking with banks, and I don't really feel like they're going fully on banking. They're going to focus on banking right now because that's what they've been focusing on the last 10 years. But they're going to do way more than just that. It's very clear. They're focused on all these things, like all these partnerships that are really going to explode XRP. So I don't feel like they're just going to do banks. I think they're going to expand, which makes it very clear that they just double down on RWA, real world assets. They just bought a $200 million company called Rail, which does business to business token transactions or stablecoin transactions, which again, these are the two different niches in crypto, two different sectors. So yes, Ripple is in fact going different than just banks. They're preparing for it for the next year when stablecoins for business to business reach $3 trillion, what the US government or someone in the US government said, market.
Years ago, we had to kind of formulate our own ideas and say, well, maybe this is going to happen to the coin. This might be a thing.
It was much more risky to buy the coin 3 years ago. That's why it was much cheaper as well.
We've moved on so far and we have so much adoption within this space. It's not really speculation anymore, more of a, we know it's going to happen. We're waiting for that event to take place. That event has taken place. So we've heard from Ripple and a number of companies before. It's kind of like in 2017, 18, 19, we would really wonder, like, are companies buying Bitcoin? Can they spell Bitcoin? That kind of thing. We heard from Ripple that they planned on working with banks around the world. And then we heard that they were working with banks. And then we heard that they were working with central banks. Then we heard that they were working with countries and governments, many of which are under NDA, non-disclosure agreement.
So this will be probably revealed which governments they're working with. That would be pretty crazy. Like how many crypto projects work with governments? Maybe 1 to 2. Maybe just Ripple.
Clauses. So we as the public don't know explicitly who. But a lot of their sales, this was also a thing years ago, they used to sell like excessive amounts of XRP and people were like, why are you dumping these coins onto the market? And people from Ripple were like, well, we're not. We're actually selling them to governments and to banks. We just can't tell you who because we'll be sued by the laws of the contract that we signed with them. As this has mounted and we've learned more about what's happening for all coins, not even just XRP, there always seems to be a range of, well, that's not enough.
I mean, pretty clear that it's not just banks that want to work with XRP, because anyone having lots of sales or lots of transactions will try to go to competitor for a lower fee. And XRP is offering very low fees, which makes it instantly win in terms of any other competitor. Like if you go to Swift right now, it probably can't do like 1/20th of a penny per transaction because, they have a different technology. Maybe they can. But again, it's going to be way, way cheaper to use XRP for the banks, where XRP really grew mainstream. Now they have enough money. Now they're growing profitable, which means also their budget is growing bigger. Their budget to actually get more projects involved.
We don't have many like big companies in this space. We have foundations, but we don't have many companies like Ripple. We have a Cardano Foundation, Ethereum Foundation. I think there's a Tron Foundation, Solana Foundation. You get it. But Ripple as a standalone company is quite rare in that aspect.
And it's a US company, which really turned out in their favor because the US government is looking very good with them. They're inviting them to the conferences. They're inviting them even to the meetings, like, to actually voice their opinion. So that's the first thing. But also, they have 900 employees. They look legitimate to businesses and actually building their technology. They look legitimate to the governments as well. Like, are you gonna work with like a random foundation with no office, or are you gonna work with like visiting their office? I feel like this is what made banks really consider, like, wow, this is a little company. They just use crypto as a backup, and the technology out there is what they've been building 10 years.
Everything Ripple said that they were going to do, they've done, and then some. In the realm of a previous regulation.
If Ripple gets their banking license approved in October, it's game in. I totally forgot about the banking license as well. And 80% of Japan banks are supposed to be switching to XRP by end of 2025 and early 2026. So I feel like 2025 and 2026, 80% of Japan banks will not be fully using Ripple, but they will be using some aspects of the Ripple bank.
And what they could and couldn't do, and they went across oceans, and they working with other countries and things like that. That for some reason has morphed into that Ripple allegedly, and this is where it gets a little interesting. That news isn't enough. So now the news being spread around is that Ripple is secretly working with the Fed, and that any day now, someone's going to announce that XRP is going to be replacing the US dollar, and that we're going to see quadrillions.
We have the technology now. Like 2025 is way more developed to hold this technology. It couldn't be done in 1988, and it couldn't be done in 2013. But when you think about it, the technology evolving is really what changed Ripple for the better.
Of dollars flowing through XRP, pushing its price up. It's not enough of the idea that XRP is probably going to $10 to $15 per coin. We've gone over that before. We don't have to dive deep into it. If it goes to 7, it can logically go to 10. If it goes to 10, it can go to 15. That's part of the news today. The big shebang is that apparently, and I will not name any names, a number of crypto influencers have apparently been pushing the idea rather recently that there is apparently a larger amount of institutional adoption than we are being told.
So yeah, $1,000 is going to be hard, but $15 in a few cycles, it could happen. I mean, just with the burns itself, with all the partnerships, it is the positive factor that I'm excited for.
There's apparently being a lot of deep integration into cross-border payments that we are not being told about. And that apparently the Ripple stablecoin, the RLUSD, is actually, this isn't a joke. This is a real thing that's being spoken about. I saw it on Twitter. I kind of was like, okay. But then I realized that people are now kind of believing it. And that the stablecoin is apparently so secretly integrated into a number of things within the world's ecosystem that a number of influencers within the cryptocurrency space, as they're called, are now announcing that this year XRP is going to $1,000 per coin.
Now, $1,000 per coin means that it will have to be used more than the Ripple, basically the whole USD market. More money than the USD market. Now, I don't see there's even a 1% chance of this happening. People are saying this will happen if the government starts to trade their USD before XRP. I mean, just think about how silly that sounds, right? We got to stay realistic.
So when you hear stuff like this, it sounds ridiculous, and it's because it is. And luckily, there was, I think, 1 or 2 people online who actually kind of breached the topic. This is why it made the news. Because a large number of people, first of all, that's not how numbers or like liquidity or money movement actually even works.
Like if you want to see $1,000 for XRP, then you need to put like 36 trillion. We don't even have that much money in the world.
If XRP hit $1,000 within the next 12, 14 weeks, we would see an actual implosion in the world's economy. This would like be devastating to you as well. You think it wouldn't, but your entire world would be flipped upside down. There's this really interesting conversation that people keep having. It even says it here. The idea for, if you haven't seen it, a lot of the speculation is that this year, because of the upcoming potential yeses for XRP ETFs within the United States,
even the ETFs, even if everything goes perfectly, $10 is the literal maximum that this by the end of the year, like $10, but this has to be like everything has to be aligned and all the whales must agree not to sell their XRP. You know, as soon as a multi-billionaire whale sees that he's a multi-billionaire, of course he's going to sell some of it. So $10,000, some people would wake up like billionaires. Some people would probably wake up trillionaires. Like that would mean that Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO, would be a trillionaire.
There's a rising idea that we're going to hit between $100 to $200. No, 10 to 20. There we go. $10 to $20 per XRP sometime this year. It then goes on to say that apparently there was a $100 theory, but the idea now amongst a lot of influencers is $1,000. And they're touting this $1,000 as the actual base price for XRP. So you know how like a lot of times, let's say Bitcoin's at 200. Then Bitcoin's at 8,000, then Bitcoin's at 16,000, Bitcoin's at 35,000. Stay with me. And then at some point, Bitcoin falls back down to 29,000. That would then be considered like the base of like Bitcoin just won't, people won't sell their Bitcoin below 29,000. That's the idea of like the base case. People are saying that XRP is not only going to go higher than 1,000, but if at any point the price would fall,
I'm really hoping, like, to be realistic, like $5 to $6, $4. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't be unhappy with $4. Like, that's 25%. But just looking at the stock market, like, it gives like 4 to 7% a year, depending on the years, right? So even like 25% is like 5 years of stock market gains.
1,000 would constantly be the actual bounce off point. A lot of people are announcing that $1,000 this year is actually plausible. If that happens, we would see a $57 to a $59 trillion market cap for XRP.
So that would be enough for someone like to pay off the US debt if he holds like $1 billion of XRP. That would be absolutely amazing.
Leg up push. We typically see like a big run up in price for Bitcoin. When we hit $8,000, we were like, okay, looks like we've peaked. We went to 20,000. Cool, makes a lot of sense. But now we're getting a lot of like the other week. If you missed that, somebody was like, yeah, like we're going to 1.5 million per Ether. And I'm like, where exactly are you getting those numbers from? Like,
so you got to understand, if it's hard to reach $4 right now, there is gonna be very hard to reach $1,000. But if now, even if it's hard now to reach $4, it doesn't mean that in the future it will be hard to reach $15 due to so much money inflows, partnerships, all the extra money supply that is coming in. So the M2 money supply that is opening in the markets. M2 money supply is how much money is in the banks and how much money the banks are holding.
And I mean, it's not a sorry to burst your bubble kind of thing. Just under, money is flowing into our market. We're seeing like literally trillions of dollars are flowing into the cryptocurrency space. But the odds of 75 trillion moving just into...
So even if XRP is 1 trillion and Bitcoin goes to 3 trillion or 4 trillion, so that means Bitcoin would go to $200,000 and XRP hits $7, $15. I feel like that's pretty realistic. Like it would take over Bitcoin's place, but Bitcoin would be worth so much more. I don't think it's too crazy to call that. Again, it could be happening next year, could be happening in 4 years. I will keep you guys updated with more on this channel. If you guys want more content like this, smash that like button. I will keep you guys updated, and I will go edit and take a rest. You can see it in my eyes. I really appreciate you and love you all. We are live tomorrow or the next day.